Today we're talking to Jason Wright. He is a political, would you call yourself an activist?
I mean, I consider myself a politician. I consider myself a political figure because I'm the head of CalExit. So I have to step into a certain role as much as I do also just feel very much just a Californian.
What's
Yeah.
the book called?
It is CalExit, The Golden Guide to Independence.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, well, I do know a little bit about CalExit already, but the audience may not know much about it. It's basically California independence, becoming its own country. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
Reestablishment of California's nationhood.
Got it. There used to be a blue book. Now it's the Golden Guide.
Yes. I guess one could consider it kind of a modernization. When working with statistics and figures of potential nations, you got to update the thing. It had been a while since the Blue Book, and the Blue Book was successful in its own right. The Golden Guide to Independence, however, is not just for California. It uses California as the example, but a lot of this is actually applicable to, say, Texas or Florida, New Hampshire, Alaska, Hawaii, any of these other, most especially other United States entities who wish to pursue self-determination. This right here is your golden guide to achieving your independence.
You're saying it could be used in any state.
The model that we contain within it, it has California in it a lot, but you swap out California for New Hampshire, you swap out the lead California issue for the lead New Hampshire issue,
or Texas.
or Texas or whatever, right? The border, Roe v. Wade, it all depends on who you are and where you are.
And so, why should California be independent?
Well, there are myriad reasons why California should be independent. Could. Mainly, they are economic reasons, socio-political reasons. There are also some kind of world security reasons that we might eventually hit on in our discussion. Some people hear this stuff and think that it's a little doomsayer or a little what's the word? I'm over exaggerating, right? But the American war machine loves its forever wars, and if they didn't have $3.6 trillion coming in, that they were counting on, that they were already spending on bombs and bullets, that 3.6 trillion is no longer coming in. What are they going to do to fund these forever wars? How are they going to fund these forever wars? And the answer is really they couldn't.
You're talking about the amount of money that California sends to the federal government to pay for these type of things. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, California's economic outcome, its GDP is roughly, but yeah, most of that ends up going to the rest of the U.S. into the federal system, and then we're supposed to get all sorts of kickbacks, and hey, we paid all our taxes, so where's our infrastructure money, and where's our healthcare money, and where's our border security and revamping our social, systems money? Where's our solve homelessness money, right? The answer that they give us is, well, you're going to have to tax yourselves some more to raise the money that you need to solve those problems.
Taking a step back, for the average person who lives in California, what are you telling them, basically? Like, what's your message to them?
If world peace is your issue and you would like to see world peace, it will not happen while the United States' war machine is running unbridled full speed ahead. Without the funding in place, the United States war machine will not be able to run full speed unbridled, thus allowing room for the potential growth towards world peace. Is California independence going to immediately solve? No. But it will take a lot of the wind out of the sails of the doom ship. And so by doing that, we slow things down so that instead of this, record pace towards potential World War III, we've actually got people like sitting down at a table and having discussions about, okay, we agree that we don't like each other. What do we agree on other than that? What can we agree on so that we can coexist? Even though we don't really like each other, we all have to live on this planet together.
So that goes to the idea of different states not liking California as far as the population of those states. There's a lot of down talk to California.
Oh, yeah.
And probably vice versa. I mean, you hear that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I know plenty of Californians who hate on Texans
Right.
without knowing too many Texans. They just kind of get this, the media tells them that Texans are all racist. And so then if they don't know Texans personally who aren't racist, then a lot of the times they just kind of accept what the media tells them.
So would you say that's where it's coming from for the most part? Media kind of propaganda on both sides.
Yeah, the politically polarized propaganda.
Yeah. So
It really does pull people one way or the other. It feeds the division and it brews that vehement hatred. Not just a dislike, but a you are my enemy. Not just I don't agree with you, but a you are my enemy kind of an attitude. And that kind of thing leads to like civil wars, other kinds of wars, world wars, right?
I definitely, looking through like social media and stuff, I have seen like some of the harshest rhetoric against California. Let them fall off into the sea. I wish Russia would just bomb them, get them out of the way. We hate California, and then when they get told, "Oh, what are you going to do without the money
Mm-hmm.
that we send and help these other states?" I usually don't see any reply, but
Isn't it funny how that works?
yeah,
They know that they don't want us. They don't know that they need our money.
they need us. Are we really that different?
Like Californians and Americans? Or-
Yes.
I believe so.
Okay. Tell me about that a little bit, if you could.
Marcus first brought up to me at one point that there were people who were saying that Donald Trump was a fluke, that he did not actually represent any serious portion of America voters and their intentions, their wants, their desires. What we have seen through the last few election cycles is proof that that is not accurate, that he is actually representative of many, many Americans' desires, the way that they want America to be, the way that they feel America really is at its core, most inner intrinsic kind of values. Do I think that the founding fathers ever wanted the border to be closed off and walled off? No. But there are people out there who think that that is the way that America was supposed to be, how it should be. And as Americans, we all have the right to make up our own minds, have our own views and opinions, right? And that's one thing that we at CalExit actually have done really, really successful kind of ally work with, I guess you could say, more conservative or conservative leaning Americans based secession movements is that, like Texit, for example, we've got a pretty good friendship, working relationship, with Texit, and we are not part of Texit. Texit is not part of CalExit. They don't sign up to our rhetoric. We don't sign up to their rhetoric. They seek self-determination for Texas. We seek self-determination for California. We want California to be run by Californians for California. They want Texas to be run by Texans for Texas. It sounds like we're saying the same thing. We want basically inherently the same thing for our own entities. And we agree that California policies won't really fly in most of Texas. If you try to enact some super hardcore San Francisco LGBT legislation up in the northern panhandle of Texas, you're probably going to just fall flat on your face. It's not going to get anywhere. You might get one vote because the people there don't want that. And
Right.
that's their right. That is their freedom.
Yeah, and I have to say, earlier this morning, there was an online, what would you call it, a convention?
The Global Summit.
Global Summit, where other countries and states in the U.S. are all wanting the same thing. They want to become independent. And what I heard was a lot of agreement between even, red states and blue states.
Yeah.
You don't hear that much agreement. Well,
Yeah, bipartisanism in America on anything is rather rare, especially nowadays.
yeah.
To have both sides of the coin here saying, hey, California, Texas, Florida, it doesn't matter. We're all saying the same thing here. America's broken. It's beyond fixing. We need out. It doesn't serve us. There is a better way, and it's called self-determination / independence. It's really rare to find both sides of the coin saying the same thing.
I'm constantly surprised by that. I've watched Marcus, and if anybody doesn't know, I have another podcast where I interviewed Marcus Ruiz Evans, who knows a lot about this stuff and is probably the originator of the whole idea.
Yes.
So CalExit is basically a take on Brexit.
Yeah, so Marcus had written a book, California's Next Century 2.0 or something like that. CalExit was started really when Marcus wrote the book that really spelled out the statistics, the figures, explained in great detail why this is a valid and viable option for our future. Then Brexit started going down, and they were like, yeah, let's Britain exit up out of the European Union. And we saw our Scottish brothers and sisters pushing for independence, who said, oh my goodness, Brexit is going to be horrible for us in Scotland. And it's going to be horrible for all of the UK leaving, right? And so they used Britain's basic refusal of their wish to remain in the European Union. They used that as their kind of casus belli, if you will, to push for self-determination again. They saw that this is going to be horrible for the UK, which means that it's actually going to help push Scottish people closer to the brink of saying aye or yes to independence. We played off of the Brexit theme, and we noticed, there was a little bit of, some good marketing there. And when we played off of that Brexit theme and it started selling real well and the people loved it, and there was a young man who had tweeted something about CalExit. That was the first time it was ever seen or heard anywhere online on social media, right? That's like the beginning of the word CalExit being seen. And ever since then, we've run with it. The California independence movement is to CalExit away from the Union, the Union of the United States of America.
One of the reasons is socio-political, and was that because of the division between the states? Is that what you were talking about?
Partly, yes. Okay. There is more.
Okay.
As there are many other states worth of people who just vehemently despise California and feel that our policies are dragging them away from what they feel America really is or should be. Not only that, but a lot of those policies end up being in favor of things that are inherent to intrinsic California values, like, LGBTQIA friendliness, I guess you could say, protections, rights for people who are LGBTQ, right? But they don't feel that represents them. And, remember, a lot of conservatives want smaller government. They don't believe that the government should go up into your home or up into your body and tell you who you are, what you should do, right, with your home, your body, your personal freedoms. At the same time, they don't want to have to see things that they don't like. Now, I, as a Green, can kind of understand that, but also as a Californian, am like, yeah, people in hell want ice water. I would love to be able to walk down the streets of San Francisco and not see things that scar me for life. I would also like to be able to turn on the news and not see things that scar me for life. Which one of these is really the bigger issue? The person defecating on the sidewalk, or World War III coming and keeping me up at night because I'm wondering is now the time that Zarbomba is gonna go up?
I don't know the reference, but
the Tsar bomb is the most powerful nuclear device ever made in the history of the Earth, and it was designed so that one, being detonated in the heartland, in the center of the contiguous 48 United States, would spread so much radiation that coast to coast, the U.S. would be unlivable. All of the breadbasket of America wiped out. Everything else, all of your population centers, heavily irradiated. It's a one and done kind of a thing. It's a very scary prospect.
I would say that's something to avoid for sure.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Especially the fact that when they tested it, they tuned it down. They put dampening stuff in there to basically make it yield only 1/3 of what it was originally designed to do.
Wow.
And that 1/3 was a 30% increase on top of the largest, most powerful test America had ever done, the Castle Bravo.
Wow.
Which wiped out the entire island of Bikini.
SpongeBob.
Yes, and indeed, there's an episode where Squidward bakes SpongeBob a bomb pie, and he thinks that SpongeBob ate it, and then he gets feeling remorseful and guilty, and spends the day trying to help SpongeBob live out his bucket list before he goes boom. And then at the end, SpongeBob pulls out the pie that Squidward made for him, and Squidward's like, oh, well, no, and they fumble it, and it drops. And on the show, they show a video of the Bikini test. The Bikini Atoll hydrogen bomb test. It's quite meta. It is quite highbrow. It is one of those like very nuanced kind of a thing.
Right, I would not have caught that.
Most people didn't. It's why it's my favorite episode of all of SpongeBob.
Interesting. And I like how like these cartoons and Simpsons would predict. How many things have they predicted, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, right. Matt Groening, it seems he's got a very accurate read on the American public at the very least, if not the general public of the world at large, I would say, because here and there he, The Simpsons includes bits of, there are things of Olympians and other athletes and like they cover everything. And it's all so accurately done. One has to wonder, how is it that this guy who makes cartoons and has been doing this for like longer than I've been alive, right? How is it that he can get things so accurate, but the people who get paid literal millions of dollars to predict political stuff, they only deal in politics, not cartoons. They only deal in facts and statistics and policy, and they can't get stuff right. Either they're blatantly getting it wrong or they're really inept.
So getting off of the socio-political part of it, or one thing I was wondering, do you think a lot of that, because when you talk about like the transgender or the gay population and other states being against legislation, they don't hate those people. They're just thinking that that's a waste of resources or things like that. When you really talk to them and keep asking them questions, it usually boils down to religion. Would you say that's the case?
I would say a lot of the people who are not in it for the right reasons, I would say the right reasons would be the government has no place telling any single person what they can or cannot do with their own bodies, their own properties, their own freedoms, their own rights. So the people who don't take that reasonable stance, now that's not the way I feel, right? But I can see where they're coming from, and I don't see it as an extremist motivation for what they're getting at. Whereas the people who come at it with a religious fervor, yes, that is extremism. It is a kind of extremism, and it's very specifically a kind of extremism that the founding fathers of the United States of America were implicit that was to never occur.
Keep it out of the government.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the government should not be telling me what I have to believe. You're going to try and tell me I have to believe in God?
We do have a strong Republican base here.
Yeah.
Albeit they are a little bit different than other Republicans from other states.
Californian Republicans, a whole different breed of Republican.
Yeah, I noticed that.
California Republican, I would say, is more closely relatable to what you would normally consider a fiscal conservative, where their main issue is like, don't overtax, don't overburden, don't overreach, don't overspend.
A little bit libertarian.
Yeah. And roughly a quarter of California. So, it's good for my fellow California brothers and sisters to hear this. 1 out of every 4 of us is a Republican. That's not to scare you. That's not to say, beware, 1 in 4 of the people in the room with you is it's to remind you that we are all Californians, and that 1 out of every 4 of us is likely to hold vastly different views, and they're still a Californian. They're still our brother or our sister, or our non-binary. I mean, here in California, we accept that. Throughout most of the rest of the states, it's kind of hit or miss.
Have you met a California Republican who backs CalExit? Because it seems like they wouldn't.
Without naming any names, yes.
Okay. You don't have to name any names, but I'm curious about that.
Yes, I will say more than one.
More than you think.
There are a lot more people who are supportive than most people would think.
Do you know the term "steel man"?
Yeah.
That gets thrown around a lot. Can you steel man the case against CalExit?
I'm
Yeah.
a politician, but I also know all of these facts already, so
Okay.
I have a hard time saying that there is any sort of legitimate argument against it, because Marcus and we actually kind of realized last night while we were talking after I got off the train and we had some dinner and we're chit-chatting, and we realized that really, once people learn all of this information, they're no longer opposed to it.
I do got to say, the arguments that I hear you guys say, it's like, I can't argue against them. You know, it's like, we're subsidizing other states that hate us.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't like that, you know. Why don't we keep that money and help our schools, which are failing, and our homeless population, which is growing?
Yeah.
So it's really tough for me to come up with any argument against it.
Yeah, so one of the most common arguments that we've come up against is you can't secede from the United States. The Supreme Court decided that long ago with the Civil War and said that it is unconstitutional and that no one, not ever, can leave. And they referenced this piece called Texas versus White. Now, what Marcus and I like to point out is that anyone who references Texas versus White and then also says that what it says is that you cannot legally secede, obviously, clearly has not read Texas versus White, because that is not what it says. If you had read it, you would know not to say that.
Part of my new research way of going about it is using ChatGPT. Okay.
It's very popular nowadays.
Yeah. AI is taking over. But I used it and I asked the question. I said, can California secede? It started off saying no. And saying the only way that could happen was via a civil war, you know, violent uprising. And so I would ask you, have you heard of Texas versus White? Because, you know, I hear Marcus saying that a lot. And it talks about that. And it says, well, yeah, it does mention, I said, doesn't it mention that if they get consent of the states, that you can actually secede? And it actually agreed. It started to agree. I'm thinking, wow. Even ChatGPT, if you give them the arguments, you give them what to go look at.
Give them the correct information, and all of a sudden, they have to change their tune because they can't lie.
Yeah, it did talk about challenges on getting it, but it did say in the end of the day, if you get all these things done, then sure, you could do it. Do this, and that.
I'm wondering, did it bring up Convention of the States or any of that, or approaching the United Nations?
It did bring up United Nations. It brought up, it said all these.
So it used our exact talking
points. It probably got it from your book.
Yeah, it's all right there in the Golden Guide.
I encourage anybody who's wondering about this, ask ChatGPT about this stuff and see where it goes. It's interesting.
Yeah.
To say the least.
And so Texas versus White, just to finish that up, right?
Yeah.
It does very clearly say that the only way to secede and leave the Union is either through violent uprising, force, civil war, whatnot, rebellion, or through consent of the states. And that violent rebellion is not considered as a legitimate means of leaving the Union. So the only legitimate means that they have pointed out is consent of the states. They clearly point that civil war is not legitimate, and they said these are the only two ways, but this one's not legitimate. That says this is the legitimate path, consent of the states.
Do you believe at some point most Californians will agree with CalExit, and what would it take?
Well, that's very interesting. So California, as of just a couple years ago, when I was running some campaigns, managing campaigns in San Francisco Bay Area, there were roughly 21 million registered voters. Now, when it comes to the referendum and initiative process in California, the thing that kind of matters the most, legally speaking, is the voters, registered voters, because they're the ones who will vote or not. So 21 million of the 40 million-ish are registered voters. That's more than half of California is voting adults. So we recently got, some polling that showed anywhere as low as 51%. That's our bottom end, is majority. And anywhere as high as 57, 58%.
What said
Which is
yes?
still majority, are in favor of CalExit.
Really? When was this poll?
Say
Was it within the past
3 or 4 months
Oh,
ago?
really?
It was
Really?
a YouGov poll. YouGov, obviously a very notable, very trustworthy, excellent polling source,
Yeah.
is the one who put that out. And I gotta say, the Reuters Ipsos stand for 47%. I mean, really, 47%. Okay, we'll run with that total bullpucky number for a second here and humor them.
Still a lot of people.
Still quite a lot of people, and only needs roughly 4% more growth to win.
We didn't talk about what is America going to do if we leave. And it sounds like if we take away a lot of their income from us, what do you say happens to them?
That is a very fair question. And a lot of people in the beginning, several years ago, would kind of make it out to be like, we're doing this because we hate America, or we want to see the USA crumble and be destroyed. And we were like pointing out to them, no, it's already crumbled. It's already destroyed itself. The corporate autocracy has done killed America. We don't want America to suffer. We don't want Americans to suffer. We don't hate America or Americans. Like what we were talking about, Texit and Florexit, Flexit, all these other, I
gotta say Flexit is the best one.
Yeah, right. Flexit. Well, they have their rights to want the things that they want as their own entities. And we can all kind of agree that, who am I to tell you what you should do in your life? Like,
for the most part, if you just tell them that a lot of them are anti-war and they don't want.
Well, yeah. So the point that I was about to make is that which is actually worse and more detrimental? Removal of enough money that America has to withdraw from the federal forever war system and then actually do something for the people left in America? Or turning a blind eye, continuing on this path of insanity until nuclear bombs drop all across America? Which one is really the detrimental outcome? Now, obviously, that's not a guarantee. That's not a guarantee. There are no guarantees. But with the world's leadership, by and large, pushing closer and closer and closer to this midnight point of doom and destruction for all humanity deadline, it just kind of begs the question. of, do we want to risk it? Do we want to sit and hope and pray that, and this is to quote from a song, Sisters of Mercy, they had a song that talks about Mother Russia better pray that they love their children as much as we do, because Mother Russia can make bombs rain down, 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 right? And it's like a catchy, kind of a dancey 80s song. But when you listen to lyrics, it's actually very real.
Very dark.
Very dark. Yes.
Now, I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of political podcasts, and more I'm hearing America is going to collapse. Do you see CalExit as one of the solutions to that?
I do.
Okay.
Yes. I believe that America, having already suffered a massive coronary event, so to speak.
Which was?
Well,
you could say Donald Trump. You could say
George W. Bush and money for oil. I mean, WMDs were definitely the reason, not money and oil.
Right.
The thing is that ultimately the United States was only ever supposed to be so big because that's really all it could effectively govern. That's what the founding fathers felt. That's what Jefferson himself, Thomas Jefferson, said that he felt that if it grew that big, it could not adequately represent the people, that the people on the Pacific were their own people and were better off being their own people, and that America was better off leaving them to their own devices, because America would drain itself trying to conquer them and force them to become America. And then because they are so vastly different, America will continually have to impose Americanism on them, which is not contiguous with American values. The founding fathers would not have said, yes, let's force this on them. Much like Christian religion, when you read the Bible, says very clearly, you can't force it on someone. I mean, sure, you can hold a gun to their head. It's not going to make them actually accept Jesus into their heart as their Lord and Savior and all of that. The only way that they're going to believe it is if they come to it themselves. And being so far removed, being so spread out and everything, I mean, they knew that there was a vast emptiness, right? I mean, lots of native tribes that they then committed massive genocide against, but very large open plains area in the middle. And they knew that this is going to be hard to control.
Yeah, for CalExit, one of the strongest arguments for it, for me, is a release valve on this political polarization.
Yeah.
I'm not totally on board with it myself. If it came up for a referendum where they say, let's see how it would work, let's put a panel together to study it or whatever it is, I would vote for that, because I'm curious about that. But if they said become the country right now, would you vote for that? Probably not. I don't know enough. That's why I think a panel that studies that type of stuff would be good. Is that what you guys are going for the first part?
Yeah. So I haven't actually announced it, so this will be the first place where folks get to hear it.
Okay.
Because we have majority support, we have more than 50% voter support for CalExit in California now. We are going to be putting forth another initiative. It is going to start with Blue Panel, and if the Blue Panel, Blue Ribbon Investigative Panel finds that this is a not only viable but the most appropriate path to pursue, that the state of California will pursue it. And should the panel find that this is the way to go, it will then direct California governance to pursue this. Would you still vote yes on that?
I'd vote yes on it. You know, I mean, I would look at the way that it was. What do you call it?
The wording or the
Uh,
nomenclature?
no, the process of how they came to that conclusion. If that all was sound in my mind,
Okay.
100%, I would. 100%. You know, as long as California is still friendly with America and we could live in harmony still, you
Yeah,
know,
we would have to be. I
we'll
mean,
we still be friends with other states. It's not like we're going to be at each other's throats, even worse. I would love to continue talking to you more, picking your brain. I feel like we just started, but we're running out
Yeah.
of time. We have to end this. But if you want to know more about the latest on what the CalExit movement is doing, and now that Jason Wright is the head of it and Marcus Ruiz Evans is still a part of it, there's a book that you could buy on Amazon right now called CalExit, Golden Guide to Independence. There's a lot more that they're doing. Have anything to plug real quick before we...
CalExitNow.org, CalExitNow.org. CalExitNow.org is our official website. You can find CalExit LLC on Twitter and on Facebook. I run our social media. Marcus handles a lot of the live stream as our spokesperson. He
Right.
does a lot of that outreach stuff.
Plug his email. Go for it.
Marcus.ruiz.evans@gmail.com, marcus.ruiz.evans@gmail.com.
And thanks for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.